Have you ever heard of an empire that had 250 million citizens? One that was built in just a few years and then just vanished? This isn't some story from ancient history. This is the story of a digital kingdom that once ruled the internet, and then it was gone. We're going to find out why.
It all started right here, not with some grand declaration, but with a single, almost mindless action, a click. A click on a digital seed, planted in a tiny patch of land on a social network. And from that one tiny action, a global obsession was about to grow.
And oh, did it grow. Just look at this number. Seriously, let it sink in. At its absolute peak, this is how many people were living inside Zynga's world. 250 million players. You know, that's more users than Twitter had back then. This wasn't just a company, it was a legitimate global phenomenon. An empire built on games that you definitely remember, like Farmville and Mafia Wars and Words with Friends. For a moment there, it felt completely unstoppable, like a social movement that had changed the very definition of playing games online. So that's the big question, right? If it was so massive, so beloved, and so incredibly powerful, what happened? How does an empire of that scale just crumble into digital dust? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unpack. To really understand the fall, you have to go back and understand the revolution. See, before Zynga came along, online gaming was, well, it was kind of a lonely experience for most people. But one guy saw a totally different future. A future where gaming wasn't just a hobby, but a new way for us all to connect. And what's just wild about this whole story is the speed. I mean, look at this. In 2007, Mark Pincus starts Zynga. He actually named it after his bulldog Zynga. Just 2 years later, Farmville launches and absolutely takes over Facebook. And by 2011, they're going public. They're a titan of the tech world. It was just an unbelievably fast rise to power. But how did they grow that fast? It felt like some kind of magic. But behind the curtain was this brilliantly calculated strategy. It was never just about making fun games. No, it was something much, much deeper than that. No, the real secret sauce here, the real innovation, it wasn't the graphics. It wasn't even the gameplay, which was, let's be honest, pretty simple. Their true genius, the engine that powered their entire empire, was something else entirely. They were masters of human behavior. Zynga figured out what made us tick, what made us share, and what made us come back for more day after day after day. They weren't just game designers, they were psychological architects. And this is their brilliant viral loop. Every click to harvest your crops gave you this little hit of pleasure, a little shot of dopamine. Every share asking a friend for help pulled another person into the game. And those endless notifications, your friend sent you a cow, they created this constant fear of missing out. It was a perfect self-perpetuating machine built for one thing and one thing only, engagement. And the results of all that psychological mastery? A $10 billion valuation. I mean, this wasn't just a successful company anymore. It was proof of the raw power of social engineering on a massive scale. But there was a fatal flaw in their design. You'd think an empire this powerful would be invincible. But its greatest strength was also its single, catastrophic point of failure. The very ground it was built on. It didn't actually belong to them. Okay, think of it like this. Zynga's entire universe, every single player, every click, every invite, it all existed inside of Facebook. Now, they were the star attraction, for sure. But Facebook owned the stage, they owned the lights, and they owned the front door. It was a classic and incredibly dangerous power imbalance. For years, that relationship worked. You know, Zynga brought millions of users and Facebook gave them the platform. But everything was about to change with one single, devastating decision. Facebook decided it was time to clean up its newsfeed. On paper, it sounded like a simple algorithm change. Just limit how much games could post to people's feeds. But for Zynga, this wasn't a tweak. This was an execution. The lifeblood of their viral machine was just severed in an instant. And I mean, look at this. The impact was immediate and it was brutal. Without those constant notifications and feed updates, the viral loop was broken. Engagement just plummeted. Growth froze. And millions of users, they simply disappeared, almost overnight. What happened next was one of the quickest and most dramatic collapses in modern tech history. The foundation had been pulled right out from under them, and the entire $10 billion structure came crashing down. The fallout was just catastrophic.
The stock price tanked by over 75% within just a few months of their IPO. Mass layoffs gutted the company, studios were shut down, and then in a final symbolic blow, Farmville itself, the game that started it all, was officially shut down in 2020. An entire era was just over. So what's the takeaway from all this? Zynga's story is so much more than just a business case study. It's really a digital fable, a cautionary tale with a timeless lesson about power, control, and ownership in our internet age. And this quote just perfectly sums up the entire problem. They mastered engagement, they mastered psychology, but they never achieved independence. They built this magnificent, glittering palace, but they completely forgot to buy the land it was standing on. You know, the business world actually has a name for this: platform risk. And Zynga, well, Zynga is the ultimate example. It's that inherent danger you face when your whole success is tied to a platform, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or the App Store or anything else, that can change the rules at any moment without ever asking you. Which leaves all of us with this one final crucial question for every creator, every founder, every business out there today. Zynga learned the hard way that virality is fragile and hype is temporary. They thought they had an audience of 250 million people, but in the end, that audience belonged to Facebook. It forces us all to ask ourselves, who really owns the connection?